Hello everyone, today we'll be creating a ChatGPT powered Dungeons & Dragons game. We'll be using C++ to create the structure and our character at the start, and then we'll be asking ChatGPT for story elements and dialogue options. If you don't already have VC package installed on your computer, you can go to the link in the description to download. We'll be using this to install curl, which is what we'll be using to call ChatGPT in our program. To install it, you'll copy this to clipboard after clicking code, and then going into the directory where you want to install it. On Windows, you can type in cmd in the search bar, type git clone, and paste in the link. This will install the package onto your computer. After that, you'll need to scroll down and run the bootstrap that file right here. Next, in the same command prompt, you're going to type in this command to install curl into your computer. Now, I have a 64-bit Windows computer, which is why I am using this command, but you'll need to adjust this to 32 if using a 32-bit machine, or Mac OS if you're using a Mac. Once you have that, it should be installed right here. And you need to keep this open because after that, we will go into our project. We will be creating this and adding the dependencies into the project settings. First, we'll be going to the C++ section and adding the include directory. You need to get the directory by going into the folder, then include, and then copying this path, putting it here. You can also go here and include it in the directory here. Now, in the linker, we need to include the library directory. Since we'll be using debug mode, we would need to go to debug and lib here. After that, we will go to our additional dependency section under input and put in these libraries. I will include this in the description as well. And after you do that, you can go here and include this define that allows curl to work, and then the include for curl. Now that we have curl set up, we can write a function to contact ChatGPT and get a response back. In this function, we're going to pass in a message and a temperature to ChatGPT and get a response back. If you know how ChatGPT works, the temperature value determines how unpredictable or creative ChatGPT is. A lower value makes it more predictable and have consistent options, whereas a higher temperature will make it more creative. However, the caveat is if you make it too creative, then it can just spit out garbage. So it's a balancing act to get the right value. So here is the start of our ChatGPT function. We are creating an instance of curl, and we are going to send a JSON payload to OpenAI. And here is where we're going to put all of our message content. So this first section right here, actually, well, we should first start at this section, the model. I am using ChatGPT 3.5 Turbo. You can look up the different models they have on their website. But this one, I think, is a good medium model to use, and it's not too expensive because if you use the better models, then it costs more to call their API. Next is the message. So there is a system message and a user message. And the difference is the system tells ChatGPT the context of what is being asked of it. So here, I put a short message about it being a Dungeons & Dragons game master, and it will have other parameters about the character, which I've determined would be good for it to know ahead of time. And then after that, we are going to pass in the content, and that is this M right here, which I passed in here. And this is what I wanted to act upon and return a response to. And then next is the temperature, which I am passing in here because I want control over this for the different things I will be asking it. The other ones, I I don't care about them too much, but you can modify them however you see fit. An important one here is max tokens. This limits how big the response from ChatGPT can be. And if you have a bigger response, then it also costs more money. So you don't want that too big, unless you don't care about spending more money on it. So you can increase that. I think this is a good response limit for the text I want to receive. Also, for this particular setup, I don't want a user reading paragraphs and paragraphs of response because it's a lot of reading to do. Over here on the right, we are sending in context. This is a function we're going to write that gives it more information on what has already happened, so it can provide better responses based on what's already happened. For now, we're just going to return empty string, but we will fill this in later once we write the other classes. Next, we are going to send over this JSON payload and add in our API key to ChatGPT. Now that I've written all this out, you can see we create the headers here. We insert the API key here, so I'm not putting it in because I don't want this public on YouTube, but this is where you'll put your API key in, and there's videos online if you know how to do that, where you find that on OpenAI's website. And then we're going to write a write callback function for this to call. And then this would be our function to parse the data coming back from ChatGPT to get the response from it, because it doesn't just send the response as a simple string. It's embedded in a whole JSON object. And we will also be including the std namespace, so I don't have to keep writing that out. Next, we'll go over here and make all of these static so we can reference them in the main function. And we will also need to add more return statements over here. And we do this so we can easily debug our program if there is an error with the JSON formatting, or if we get an equal sign right here. But this should all be complete now. So if we go over to the main function, we will print out our message to ChatGPT. So our temperature here, I set is 0.7. This is the typical temperature that you set for like an average creativity. And right here, I'm seeing the message, and you'll notice that I'm not being very descriptive, but I have already told it that it is a Dungeons & Dragons game master. So it already has everything it needs to properly answer this question. And next, I'm going to put my API key in and then run the program. Now that we have that, and press play. And here we go. This is what it has given us. Starts off a story in a city, yada yada. You will notice that there are some weird things in here, like these new line characters. So we'll need to take those out ourselves. There's any other special characters we don't want in there, messing up our code in the future. So next, we are going to write a function to remove this. So now we can go over here, and before we return the response, we are going to pass it here. So this will remove the new line character, and this will remove extra quotations. We don't want those either. And we can go ahead and put at the top here as well, because we want to remove certain characters from our message so it doesn't misformat our JSON payload here. And then we will go in and send this new message string. Now, we also don't want it getting cut off mid-sentence. Since we are limiting it on how much it can return, there is a chance that it will want to continue writing, but we cut it off. So to fix this, we will cut off anything after the last period in the last sentence. So this searches backwards from the end of the string for the first period, and then tells it to stop right there. So now is the fun part of building our character. So here is where we're going to specify all of the attributes our character can have, and then we can turn this into a string and send it over to ChatGPT every time we ask it a question about our character. This way it's always consistent, and it provides responses based on our character's attributes. For example, if it's a wizard, it might give an option to cast a spell. But if it's an archer, it might give an option to shoot an arrow at an enemy. So firstly, it's very important to have a name. So we are going to give it a name. We also want a gender. So it specifies whatever you like. And then a location. So this way we can have multiple locations in our world, and it always knows where we are in that world. Two other important attributes are class and race, which we will need to find up here. So I'm just going to write a few classes, but you can have as many as you want here. I'm just going to write a few of the basic ones. And our character also has stats. So we are going to find another structure this time. And here we are also going to have to convert our enums into strings for it to utilize. Now we can utilize these functions here. I also forgot to include the character can also have health and mana. Now, these are less important since ChatGPT does have a difficult time keeping track of these and understanding what they really mean in terms of the game. But we can go ahead and include them here just so as a reference of how much health and how much mana our character at least starts with. So they have an idea of how powerful magically they are and physically they are. Here we have our finished character to string function, which prints out all of our information, which we can easily send over to the AI. We will also need a copy of this, which includes new lines. So when we create our character, we can print this out in an easily readable way. Now that we have this written out, we can go over to our header file, and we're going to create constructors for the character. Now we're going to need one where we pass in the information, and then one where it creates it on its own, since we want the AI to generate characters for us in-game to interact with. Now we have to write a function to initialize our attributes, such as health and mana, depending on our class and race. In addition to health and mana, we should also add melee damage, so we know how much our character does in terms of damage, since bigger characters will do more damage than smaller ones. In addition to these values being based on race, they are also based on our stats. So, for example, our health will be based on our constitution value, and our melee damage will be based on our strength. We'll also add a couple instances of the class impacting the mana, health, and melee damage. But of course, you can adjust these as you see fit for your version of this, as well as any additional races and classes to interact with their stats. And then we can go up here and initialize our attributes, both our characters. But we will also need to create the randomization functions for this character constructor, which will generate it on the fly. So here we have the function to set the class, race, and gender randomly. And obviously you can increase these or decrease these depending on the number of options that you have in your version. So the way I'm going to set the stats up is every stat will start at 8 points, and it can be set up to 18 points. And I'm going to give the user 30 points to distribute among all of the stats. But because the max is 18, they can assign at most 10 extra points to every stat. So here I've written the class to allocate the stats. So the wizards, they get more intelligence, warriors get more strength, monks and druids get more wisdom, elves get more intelligence, humans get more charisma, and gnomes get more wisdom. Another 4 as well. And then we randomly distribute the rest of the points to the other stats until we have no more points. And we actually need to create the stats structure beforehand, and this is where we will initialize everything to 8. Now we have the name. So the way I did this is I created a first name function and a last name function, and both just have a list of names that I got from ChatGPT. So I'm going to paste those in now, but you can always add your own names as well if you want them to appear in your game. So here we go. We have a list of first names and a list of last names. And so then our person's name will be first name plus last name. Next, we're going to go into our world class and write the function for us to create our own character at the start of the game. So we are going to start here by asking for the player's name, followed by gender, race, class, and then we're going to write the logic for getting the stats. So here's a little function or segment of code in our function to select the race. And this is where you will list out all of the race types they've specified earlier, and then the range, and be sure to update this as well with the count of races. Same thing for the class. I specified here all 5 classes. And then be sure to create the race object and the class object from those values. Next, we are going to be writing a logic to add the stats to the player. And I'm giving the player 30 points to utilize, but you can increase or decrease this to your needs. Now, that is it for our stats. And remember, all of this will be on GitHub in the link below. Going too fast for you. And you can find all of this code and just copy paste it. So next, with all the stat information, we can now create our player. I have just put it into a temporary object here, but we actually need to store it into our world. So let's go back over here and create a character player. And we make it static, so only one world. And here we put our player. We can now go back over here and create a new game function where we will put our player creation. And then we're going to print it out just to be sure it looks good. And now we can run our program and create our first character. After we call new game. Here we go. We call you. So now this is where we select a number. So I'll say 1 for human. Let's be a wizard. And so our wizard, we'll say he has a good amount of intelligence and wisdom. And then we'll give him some riz, some dexterity, and then a little bit of strength. And now I've given up all 30 points. It has created this player here. We should actually use this function in the future to be formatted. But here is our character created. And we can see that there is an error here. I did forget that we have to subtract these by 1 because the first enum is actually 0, not 1. So for the race and the class choice. And then when we go over here to where I put the character, we're going to use the formatted version so we can see that a bit better. So next, we're going to go into our world class, and we're going to write a function to generate a new area by passing in our character, and then we're going to get back the name of that area as well as a description for it. Now, I'm going to be pasting a prompt that I've already written. I think this is it fully encapsulates everything that needs to be done to generate the area. So tell it to generate a new area, describe the surroundings, tell it to be a narrator, and then I have a very specific request from it. I want it to first state the name of the area followed by a period, and so we're going to use this to keep track of all of the areas in the game. So next we need to write a code segment to get this. And now we have gotten the area where we've parsed it from the name and the description for it. So now we are going to create a list of these. Or actually, we're going to be creating a map of these. And we're going to insert it into our map for tracking later on. We are also going to have to add the list of all these areas into our prompt, as I've been specifying here, so we don't have ChatGPT return an area we've already created. Then we are going to tell the player to go to this location, and we're going to return this object. Next, we're going to come here and create our play game function. Which we will be calling here after we create our player. And this play game function is mostly going to be a while true loop that will continuously run our game. But first, we're going to have to generate our first area. After we generate an area, we need to generate a list of decisions for the player to make, so this game can continue on past just generating a world. So here we are going to create another function which is very similar to this one, but we are going to prompt it with creating decisions for us. I have also already written the prompt for this one. You can take a look at it here, but I am telling it to provide a few distinct options, as well as very specific commands from it, such as separating by period, question mark, or exclamation point, so we can parse those into different options for our player to select, and then we can return one of them in the next response, in the next prompt. And again, we are passing in the player's details and the area. So next, we're going to write the function to parse these options from ChatGPT as best we can. Since there could be extra spaces, commas, whatever around the response returned, we need to write a trim function, which we will use to trim it to be of the correct format. So here we have parsed our options from the response. So first we get the period, question mark, exclamation point, and then we trim it, and we get one option here. And then for the next one, we have to then trim it again and remove that from the response. We'll continue through the while loop. And then we're going to remove any duplicate options, so we don't want to give the user the same option twice. Now up here, we can use these options and present them to the player. So here we are presenting the options to the player. And since they are a variable number, we have to consider that when printing it out and choosing from them. And we also need to check if it's a travel, because if so, then we need to generate a new area. If it's not, we need to write a function to make a decision based on our choice. So that's what we're going to do next. And here I have the prompt for this one. We're passing in the option we chose and the area, and I'm just asking it to tell me what's going to happen next after I decide this option. I have also specified different types of responses it can have, such as finding treasure, enemy, friend, battle, or event, and then followed by a period so I can parse it out later. Next, I need to parse out the type. So in order to do that, I have to specify different types appear in the world. So we're going to create a new enum called an encounter. And some encounters that I've described are treasure, now we can use this enum. We will also need to be keeping track of our encounters and our decisions that we make. And then we go up here and add our decision that we make here. Now we have to go back to this context function we talked about earlier and provide the context we now have. Here, we're going to specify the levels of context. Now, this should be limited because we don't want to send over too much data to ChatGPT. One, because it'll be too much for it to handle and it might miss important details. And two, there is a limit to how much you can send over, so can't send too much. So here is our code to bring in the context from the decisions we have made. And notice I have also specified that any creature should not disappear, because I did notice that in my testing, and in the response, some creature magically wasn't there anymore. So stuff like this, make sure it's very specific, especially when you increase the temperature, like I mentioned earlier, it can make it do some weird things. So especially when you do stuff like that, you need to really drill it in to the AI what you want. Now here is the code to include the encounters as well. It's pretty similar to the decisions. It's just specific to finding things and then interacting with those things. And then after this, we are going to have to do a bit of trimming like we did before, in the form of removing certain characters that shouldn't be there in the response. After we added this, we should go back to our world and basically child-proof this function, since ChatGPT does act like a child sometimes, and it does not listen to very specific instructions. We need to ensure that it returns at least one response. So in order to do that, we are going to have to, instead of returning right away, we are going to get a vector and we're at a while loop. And this way, by having a while loop, we continuously run this function until we get a response. After doing this, you need to come down here and change this to an equal sign, because it's supposed to break if it can't find something. And now we can test our program. Go ahead and run it. I will be a elf druid that is strong and formidable. I'm going to have some Riz and just a dash of dexterity. After putting this in, it says I find myself in the Whispering Woods. I sense something, ancient voices. I use my druidic sense because it takes in the fact that I am a druid. And then there will be appropriate decisions I can make. I'm going to approach this wolf. I catch a thorn whip. Or I could travel deeper into the woods. And so I have indicated that I can use the travel travel word, that if a decision starts with this and I click it, it will go to a new area. So I miss the dense foliage, woods. And now I have more decisions to make. Oh yes, this is right here, this tranquil beauty within the enchanted glade. So yes, here's this new area, the enchanted glade I've entered. I can continue this for as long as I like. And every time you play it, come with a different response. And if you add a higher temperature value, where is it, to here, you can get some crazier responses. Well, I hope you like this video. This was a very interesting project. It was fun for me to work on. It's the extent at which ChatGPT could be a game master for a Dungeons and Dragons game. So, thank you for watching.